We have great reason to believe there is still a massive crypto pump ahead of us. But is it fair to say we're all trying to position ourselves in the cryptos that we hope will have the very best gains ahead of us? Today I have Paul on for our weekly price analysis of many of the hot or not cryptos, so we can get a feel for what Paul and I think about them and their price action as we take a look at our opinions on them. None of this is to be construed as financial advice, just our opinions and our thoughts for our own portfolios on the cryptos we're going to take a look at. Welcome to the Crypto Rainn channel. I'm your host, Jay Rainn, and if you like money and crypto and are looking for a real investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family by liking this video and subscribing with that all notifications button enabled. Special note, again, we are not financial advisors here. We are crypto investors. So yes, just know that we're just giving you our opinions. And you can take with that what you will, but do your own research before making any decisions. All right, so join us, strap in for the show. We also have our producer D Money at the helm that's running things for us. Thank you, D. And let's get this party started. Join me, Rainmakers. So thank you for helping us grow this channel. Smash those likes so we can keep growing and increase the giveaways, because the bigger we get, the bigger our giveaways to you will go. And we do have a giveaway from Wanchain that we give away this week, and we will be giving it away Friday, so stay tuned for that. But we will talk about the details of giving it away later today. So we are building the most informed audience in crypto, and if we nail that, it should also become the wealthiest audience in crypto. Let's welcome Paul from Definity, who's joining us, and we're going to look at some good price action, many projects that are suggested by you for us to take a look at.
It's great to be here. I'm really excited to look at what you want to have a look at and what we've seen before, and are we going to see a Santa rally? It's really exciting in the crypto space. Lots of volatility, lots going on.
Totally, yeah. And what I love is you look at so many things outside of crypto too. So before we get into some of the crypto projects, I'd love to get a feel for what you think is happening with equities. Talked about that earlier in the live stream, though our viewers aren't going to see this till Thursday. It is recorded Wednesday, just after our live stream on Wednesday. So we have, equities. There's some interesting things going on there.
Sure, I'll just pop into the trading view and I'll just show you what I'm looking at the moment. So basically there's a few things. I've got my Bitcoin ready to talk about that, but before we get to those points, starting off with the S&P 500, we saw a rally into a new high and a little bit of a correction, so the market's coming back down now, which is fine. It should really do that because the broader trend has been very hot and now it needs to just ease off a bit. But it's not a massive correction. The market hasn't crashed as they've been saying in the headlines. It's not as big as being made out. Now, in the NASDAQ, there's a little head and shoulders pattern. That's usually a trend-ending signal, but it's so small, it just suggests that we're going to see a move back down. And something else I look at is the VIX index, which is something called the fear index, which is what people buy when they think the market's going to go down. It's based on option volatility and prices, which we won't go into because it's a bit too complex for a show like this in the short term. You'd need a bit longer to talk about it. But basically, we've been knocking on a really important resistance level at 28.5, which has stopped the VIX prices going much higher. But if it breaks through, I think we're going to see a little bit more downside in the equity markets. But what is really interesting is we'd already seen a rally in the dollar, and this had occurred before the move down in crypto, which was surprising because we saw a big move up in the dollar. Crypto basically ignored it. And then we saw another surge. And then it looked like crypto was reacting to it. Now, the dollar's eased off a little bit, which it should have done because the trend rate was really aggressive. So it's coming back down again. But I do think the dollar has got a bit more in it, maybe one more leg before it turns over. And my timing for that was perhaps into next year. And then any pressure, if it is indeed putting any pressure on crypto, will then start to ease off. So the broader picture outside is equities are maybe correcting a bit. The dollar's come off a little bit. and yields as well have been bubbling up. Let me just get my yield chart. So this is the chart of yields, and it was attempting to break this 1.774 level in the 10-year. So this is 10-year government paper, which implies what people will have to pay for things like mortgages and stuff like that, and what businesses need to borrow for longer term. So this is the cost of longer term money. So if this goes, I mean, it's at a very low level at 1.7, 1.5, or where it is now, 1.43. That's a really relatively low level from a long-term perspective. The question is, which way is it moving? Is it moving up or down? It's been moving sideways, but attempting to break out for some big levels that, if it does, we could see a massive spike in yields, and that could affect all the markets. But at the moment, it's being quite well behaved, so we're just going to keep that in the back burner. I'm just going to show you one final chart before we come out of this and start taking your requests, and that is the spread of Bitcoin against Ethereum, which is something I've mentioned quite a few times. And this is the chart. So I was expecting a breakout here of this high because it was getting really close to it. And what this means is Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin. Now, what happened? We got a correction, but not a big enough correction to completely negate this pattern. As you can see, the market's come all the way back again. And why would it do that if it didn't want to break out and go much higher? So when we look at the individual charts of Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're both at the moment showing that what we're seeing on this spread chart, which is that Bitcoin is a bit of a laggard and Ethereum is getting ready to break into a new high. So if we look at the chart from a longer term perspective, you can see this looks quite a lot more like a consolidation before the trend continues upwards. So given that we're right on these levels now, we could be in for some really big moves. So it's quite an exciting moment in the markets. If it does break, then I think it would be more a bullish than a bearish signal for the sector as a whole. And especially when last week was a bit of a bearish week, given the market fears, I think that's a really nice sign to see.
Yeah, it makes sense. Earlier in the live stream, we reviewed some fundamentals of Bitcoin. And so if you haven't watched that, you might want to step back and watch yesterday's video in the live stream, because we looked at the dates where the halving happens and then how far after that the Bitcoin peak comes. In the first cycle, it was just about a year later that Bitcoin peaked before the retracement. The next cycle, the 2017 cycle, it was 500 and something days. So about a 50% increase, a little over a 50% increase. So the question is, when is the Bitcoin peak going to happen this cycle? Now, if you take that elongation that happened and you extend it some more, it could be like a 700-day increase. So that puts it as possibly peaking out in April or May of next year. And so we're not sure. There's not enough data points to really know, because we really only have two halvings followed by a peak to look at. So we've had a third halving, but we don't know where the peak is to be able to look at that. So there's this theory called elongating cycles, and the data seems to be lining up with that. Funny enough that the pumps also coincided with November and December both times, and so is this December going to be really strong? And it's uncertain whether it is, although the chart you just showed suggested that ETH is ready to break out, and there's some good reasons to be bullish on ETH, because people are locking up for ETH 2.0, as well as some of the ETH is getting burned in the transaction fees now, and so there has been this supply decrease, or just not as much of an increase of supply as there used to be. And so while demand has continued strong, the increase of supply has been cut tremendously. So it will have some kind of an effect like a Bitcoin halving happens. And when it seems to suggest, the charts that you looked at, that maybe that's coming soon, that Ethereum is going to take off.
Yeah. That's really interesting background. And when you talk about sort of into April, May next year, the broader picture, I think we've consistently said that we think is bullish. It's just a question of whether we get a bigger retracement before this big move happens, or smaller one. And it's always nice when you get a smaller one, and we don't have to ride out a bigger correction. But there are people out there looking to buy on a pullback, and of course they would really love to see the markets go lower.
Yeah, and it could. It could. The market
Absolutely.
takes the most amount of money from the most amount of people. So if everyone's expecting December to be really strong, well, then it's going to take a lot of money from people. When it then dips down, a bunch of people panic sell out of their positions, only to early next year go on a massive run, and that would take a lot of money from a lot of people. And so I always try to keep a few of the options of how it could play out in my mind. We have some good suggestions. So if you're looking to be part of the show and have us review what project you're looking at, remember to leave the ticker symbol and what you like about it in the comments. So we're going to review some of your suggestions from last week. Now, do keep in mind, sometimes YouTube will remove your comment where you post it, you won't be able to see it. That's just because for whatever reason it got automatically screened. So manually I can go in there and say, oh yeah, that was fine. There are a lot of scammers that tell you to call some WhatsApp number or whatever, and they pretend they're me or they pretend they're whoever. Those are all scammers. So don't like anyone asking you to call a WhatsApp number and then the next thing they'll do is tell you to send some funds. That's always a scam. So don't get worried if you put a suggestion and it gets screened out temporarily. We will unscreen it so that we can have it for next week to put in the comments. So before we get into some of the suggestions from the viewers, I wondered if you would pull up the chart for Wanchain. I'd like your opinion on this because I saw in the chart for Wanchain, Zilliqa, and VeChain. WAN is WAN. The chart I like the best that has the best history is the one versus the as calculated by TradingView. So if you put WAN USD, so if you put in WAN USDT, it'll there we go.
So WAN USDT.
No, skip back a little bit. Get rid of that T. That one calculated by TradingView.
Yeah,
that is the one. It has the best history. So go way back on that history. Take it out of log scale just for a second, and look at this nice rounded bottom over. Yes. So I was showing, we talk about rounded bottoms all the time with my viewers. And if you actually draw out that rounded bottom, I was looking at that. I was like, man, that looks really attractive to me. That the sell pressure that kept it down for so low continues to ebb as buy pressure exceeds it, but it's come right down to this nice rounded bottom trend line. Both on this, on Zilliqa and VeChain, all of these projects that really launched their ICOs back in 2017. A lot of their tokens are in supply already or in circulation, so there's not pressure from pre-sale investors selling their tokens. And so I liked what was going on there. And even though all of them had some massive pumps in March, April, May, all of them came back to this nice, larger, rounded trendline bottom.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting because you have got these rising lows, which, of course, are important. I mean, you've got the big elephant in the room is this big spike area here and the fact that it's come back down again. But the lows are still rising, which is great. But also, something that I really like, as I've mentioned a few times on the channel, is when we get these triangular constrictions, and must remember to talk about Sandbox before we end the show, by the way, because that's doing something interesting. But we've got this triangular constriction, which means that the market is just waiting and there's compression before we get a breakout. Now, I've seen this a few times in some of the other markets, and the breakout has usually been to the upside. So I'm optimistic that this is a buy, even though it might not move this week or next week. It might not even move the week afterwards. But I think at some point it's going to wake up and then break this resistance line, and then start heading towards this ultimate resistance here. If it takes that out, the long-term chart's going to look fantastic. So it's a bit of a sleepy one for the moment, but I do think it's got a lot of potential.
Awesome. Let's jump over to Sandbox because the charts on those other two look very similar to Wanchain's chart.
Right. Okay.
And all they have to do is check out my video from yesterday, and they'll be able to see more in depth on those ones. Cool.
Now, so you were quite rightly saying that you thought it had gone up enough and it was time to maybe get out. And I was saying, like, technically, I'm not allowed to until I see a signal. And this is the reason. Short term, we did get a sell signal on the next day, and this is called a spike. When the market makes a new high, then it comes back down again, and you've got this big run of price action. But a spike usually means the market is going to go sideways for a bit. It just means it's really hot, and it's overly hot in the very short term. So we haven't seen a reversal pattern as yet. Now, a reversal pattern would come in when the market makes something like a double top. So 2 attempts to go higher and then a failure is what a double top is. And if it does that, then we can say sell, which it still hasn't done yet. Now, lots of new technical analysts, when they're looking at charts, they always try to predict a top. And therefore, we try to do, as you've said many times, Crypto Rainn, you've said, you want to do the opposite, the contrary sort of thing that other people won't do. And therefore, it's the same in technical analysis. If everyone's looking for tops all the time, we go the other way and we try to look for trends that continue. So this could be a really nice triangular constriction, which is a very bullish pattern. And it would suggest that if we take these highs out, this resistance line, so it could play between this resistance and support line for a few days, maybe a week or something like that. But then if it breaks out, this is going to look really bullish. So if you look at any long-term chart of any market that's exploded higher, you'll see a lot of triangular constrictions of some kind, either what's called a symmetrical, which is what this one is, or the ascending one, where the highs are near the same point, and then the signal is the breakout from the high. So it's really important to say it's not just bullish on its own. It has to complete and then trade higher to give confirmation to that signal. But this is looking good, I think. So it's you may disagree at this point, but
why don't we give our analysis on it? If you pull that chart back up, would this be a buy, a wait, or a sell for you?
Well, for me, it would be a buy. It has to remain a buy until I see something in the bigger picture, because it's a bigger picture trend that reverses. So very simply, it's still a buy.
Yeah, I like it. Like, it's suggesting a constriction there rather than a double top. It could be a smaller double top, though. I would say that this is a buy for me, but I would categorize it in the blue chips part of my portfolio. So it'd be a very small buy. It's already gotten some of its gains, and some of it, sand has risen so much. Now, Facebook really thrust metaverses into the spotlight, and how long that'll continue, I don't know, but I think it's got some more ride to go. That's my guess. And so for me, it would be a buy, but it would only be a one-night stand for me. Like,
and then lose it, basically.
I wouldn't marry it. Yeah, no, I'd take some of the ride up, and then it's like, just be a one-night stand. So
yeah, that's fair enough. I was saying on my own podcast, I had a gentleman on who's a property market cycle analyst, and he thinks that we're going to see in the coming years some massive moves in property markets, and he thinks that the next big thing will be the metaverse, because it will show like a spillover from the real world into that world. So yeah, very short term, it could well be overdone. But it's really interesting that the potential real estate cycle and what's going on with these areas, the metaverse, could actually kind of lock together for a few years. But yeah, you can be too early. That's true. But
one of the challenges is the token versus the land. Like, I'm still bullish on Sandbox's land, although it's very expensive now. The entry level price is $15,000 for out of the way land, like 15,000 American. Like, it's crazy high, and it'll go higher. You watch it go to 75,000. But I'm more interested in the metaverse land or the gaming land that's cheap. That they're just launching the land, and like Gaia is doing a land sale soon, like $100 something for the smallest land pieces, or Cornucopia's land, or some of these other projects where the game looks like it'll have traction and it's cheap, because then if that goes to 15,000, well, what's that, like 10x, 100x, 150x. Whereas, like, you know, if the entry level land for Sandbox or Decentraland or Axie Infinity, these are three of the large games or metaverses, they're all their base land price about 15,000 a piece. And say they 10x from here, I mean, that's amazing, 150,000. But it's only 10x from here. It's not 150x like some of these other ones they're launching, or Network's land is coming out more expensive than that, but you know, if that goes to 15,000 for a base price, that's still a lot better return than these. Now, they're higher risk in that, you know, Sandbox has established itself pretty well. It's been out for a long time. So is Axie Infinity and some of these other ones. Unfortunately, I sold all my Axie Infinity land. I bought a massive done at extremely cheap prices, but I was selling them when they were at 2,500, and now actually those pieces of land are going for 75,000. Some of them 150,000. So I sold a little bit early, but on their website they had only released 1/4 of the land, and they said when they released the next section of land, they were going to be marked up from the sale prices of the first round by 10%. So they had like 200x'd. And I was like, wow, they could release another quarter of the land at 10% higher prices than the previous sale. That had me scared to death. And so they have since recanted on that and said, well, they're not going to release them for a while and only release it when all the community's begging. And who knows what the prices they'll release at are. But I was worried because at any time they could release a whole section of land, it would just kill the prices.
Of course, yeah.
So I had to bail out on that, and it turned out to be a terrible decision because it's gone way higher. But given the information I knew at the time and that everyone knew at the time, it was smart to take profits.
Yeah, you can only deal with what's in front of you at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So when they made that change, it's like, oh, shoot. Oh, well. And it's gone tremendous since then. And those pieces of land selling for so high, like at some point that will come back down to reality. But I do think it'll go higher before it comes down to reality. Though the money's to be made on these smaller projects. So the Sand token, though, is just a token. Like, what do you even need the token for? So that's where I differentiate the land from the token. Decentraland's mana, what do you need the token for? Except you can exchange some things for it, but you can also use ETH or wrapped ETH to make those trades. And so the token has pumped because these things are pumping. But what is the value of that token? It's hard to say, because why do you need that token? You really don't need it.
Yeah.
But
unless they start charging rent or something, you got to pay it in those coins, which would probably be the next step.
And we'll see how that plays out. Like Axie Infinity's token, you get control of the DAO, and possibly there will be some passive income through their token. Sandbox's token, Sand or Mana. So I look at what's the utility of the token, and it's not clear to me what the utility of the Sand token is in Mana. And so though I'm bullish on those ecosystems, the land value is going higher. The token I'm more cautious on, but I would still just one night stand with it. So
yeah,
and I would take the ride higher, which I think is where it's going to go. All right. Any other ones you wanted to look at before we get into some suggestions from the audience?
Yeah, actually, yes. I would like to, let's just pop back into my trading view, because there is a nice little technical setup that I think is about to potentially break out. And where is it? Here we go. It's MATIC. So MATIC has been in this triangle for a little while. And when everything was correcting, it stayed within this triangle. So just quietly bubbling along. So I've bought a little bit of this. So, I just think for purposes of like, transparency, I just want to say I've already done that. But I'm thinking if it breaks this resistance line, then this could go back up to, the previous resistance at 289, maybe even break 3 with the wind behind it. So I like this triangular constriction, and it just started to break out. Let me show you on the daily why that was interesting, because it just sort of eased up towards the resistance and then had one quite strong candle. It was as though the market was getting ready to rush through that level. And so I just wanted to get in ahead of it. Now, it is ahead of it because it hasn't broken the resistance. It could drop back into this range and then be all boring again. But at some point, it's got to break out, whether it's upside or downside. And I'm just thinking potentially bullish. So I just wanted to share that because I just thought, if it goes, it was sort of in the back of my mind that might.
So that's definitely, if you'll pull up the chart again, that was definitely a buy for you then.
Yeah. So there we go. Trading view back to MATIC.
Because you feel pretty strong that it's going to come up, test that resistance, break through it, and then test it as support and probably continue.
Exactly. Up. Yeah. I mean, you could wait for a breakout if you wanted to be really cautious, which is absolutely fine. But I prefer to get in, and then if it doesn't go, I can just bail out. And if it's not moving that much, it'll be a relatively small position. But So
I think MATIC has great long-term perspectives. And so, like, I don't love this entry point because near the top of the trend line, I like to buy closer to the bottom of the trend line, though you might be right. It might come up, push through that, and then be off to the races. But in this one, I'd be waiting to either see it broke through that, or I'd be waiting to buy along the lower part of the trend line.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's a bad buy now because it's been constricting for a long time. And so assuming we all had endless amount of funds, which we don't, so we have to make decisions. So when I say whether it's a buy and stuff, like unfortunately I'm not at the $100 million mark where I can have everything, right? And I have tons of liquidity sitting on the side to be in every position. And probably that's even hard to do with the $100 million mark. But let's just assume I had unlimited funds. I would still wait on this, either for it to come back closer to that lower trend line, or then run up to break through and then retest and then start heading up. And those would be my entry points on MATIC. Though I have some MATIC because I use their ecosystem. I don't have a sizable amount of MATIC, just a titch.
Yeah. I totally get the buy on retracement angle that you have, and as I've said before, I wish I could do that a bit more because I get excited when things start to wake up. But you could definitely, with the fundamentals, have your buy points in much better levels. But that's the
problem with waiting is it might happen when I'm not seeing it, and so it's not a bad position to take now because my guess is it's going to do very well ahead. And it just went through such a massive pump before, and now it's been trading sideways for so long. And Polygon's network is getting a lot of use, so I think it's got a bullish time ahead of it. Let's take a look at Legends of Crypto game. Now, I haven't covered this in a while, and this came from Chris.
Okay.
It's LOCG, and let's see what this looks like when you try to pull it up. Okay, versus USD. Yep.
Yeah, I love the name, if nothing else.
Yeah, they're making a playable card game, and they do have some connections with Blizzard that help them design the gameplay, and they've had some good announcements coming out, and their game is, I think, launching, or at least a beta of it, in December. So it's like I covered this actually before they had launched, and I had their CEO come on and share more about it. Unfortunately for me, I was fairly new at recording guests, and there was a terrible echo. And I had to take the video offline because there was a horrible echo on the sound side. I didn't do a sound test beforehand. A totally epic crypto Rainn fail. I mean, shoot. Find out how human I am at times.
It's easily done. The audio routing is an absolute nightmare. I can tell you that. But it's a lot easier done than people think. But that is a shame. But as far as the coin goes, it's interesting. I mean, it's consolidating. There's no real impulse trend here at the moment. I don't know what happened there. That's just suddenly dropped. There's no impulse trend right at this moment. But it is still rising, and when it rises into new highs. So there's no natural resistance other than what we've seen recently. So very short term, if we were just to tuck into this very short term price action here, we can see that the market is gently rising off this trend line, which it seems to be respecting. So that's kind of a nice pullback level to be thinking about buying. It wants to come back to this 0.28 point. You see how it's pivoting above and below and above and below that area. So it's a good buy at that point, given that it's now on the upper side of it. And obviously there's some short-term trading in and out of it. that's making it stay within this range. But it's just the people who are selling it have got to get convinced that it's not going to come back. And I think they're not going to be convinced until we take this high out at 0.4, which there's every chance it will do. So it's a little bit range bound, but that at least that range is rising. So that's enough to say it's a tentative buy if I'm allowed to use that prefix to the word buy. But if I had to be forced to take a position, either buy or sell, it would be on the buy side.
Yeah. For me, it's a buy too. Now, there's something interesting happening today. I have some of this stake that I've held for quite a while, and the staking returns are decent. And I love it when they offer a staking return because I tend to hold for periods of time. So if I can get an extra return by staking, I love it. And so there is, though, so they are allowing you to bail out early on your stakes and still get your full rewards as of today. And the reason they're doing that is because their beta is coming out and the tokens will then be usable in the game. And so they wanted those that had them staked to be able to have them unlocked for the beta. But they say in crypto, buy the rumor, sell the news. So probably there's going to be an even bigger rise, is my guess, going into the beta as it gets more publicity, and then the game comes out, and then likely when the game comes out, there's usually a sell-off. Or what they call the actual news, like when the news event actually happens, oftentimes there's a sell-off. In rare cases,
it's so interesting you say that, buy the news, because we say buy the news, sell the fact, and I heard that in the 90s. So it's nice that that's come into the crypto world.
Yeah, essentially saying the same thing. Buy the rumor, sell the news, like when the event actually happens, which is like probably better said, the fact. So you're buying the hype going into it, or you're taking that ride and selling off when like the event happens, because once it's out, what other news is there to happen? It's out, and there's kind of like a letdown that happens. Like if you think about all the emotions going up to it, okay, it's out now, what's coming next? And there's this letdown, and the price usually reflects that. So I think that's going to be a bullish couple weeks for it. So it'd be a buy for me. Let's take a look at, we've looked at Wanchain already, actually. Let's take a look at Dent. Before we look at Dent, do you mind if we look at MTV?
We can look at anything you like. MTB was that?
MTV is in Victor.
Right. As in the...
music television.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually the ticker symbol for MultiVAC.
Okay. Yeah, this is... this could be a big reversal pattern. So this for me might need to wait because we've got this setup here which needs to hold. So you can see this is a big left shoulder. So let me just explain what I'm saying. I'm sort of just mumbling along, but there is something I'm forming in my head here to explain to you. When you get a reversal pattern, it's an area of volatility, and that's usually the sign that people have bought, are selling into latecomers, and the market price doesn't move up much higher. So this whole area here could be one big reversal pattern. Now, how do you play that? What do you do? Well, you can either just wait and see, which is ultimately what you have to do. But there's a trigger for it. So everything in technicals has got a kind of an action where if it does X, you do Y. So if it breaks this support line, then one would have to sell this particular coin, because this could be a whole reversal pattern, a big reversal pattern, big enough for it to be significant. And the correction could be fairly significant, perhaps back to the 0.0077 area. So all the way back to this breakout point. But then, of course, the new trend could start up again. So it's really just a question of whether you're going to get a big pullback as an area to buy. Now, having said that, there's no guarantee that that's definitely what's going on. It's just that if I'm taking a snapshot now, and when you've got this big kind of looming dark cloud over the market, it could go. It could be like a false alarm. The market could break upwards, and it could put all this behind it, which would be great. But it needs to do that before I can be comfortable with holding it. So the levels where we are starting to see this clear and things become, much more positive would be if it can take out this resistance line, which is at 0.0229. but it would also break this downward trend line at the same time, which is why I put that in there. So breaking this trend line, this downward trend line, would be the first step to say things are looking a bit better. And then if it starts to take out resistance, it will look really good. So if it can clear above, you see these 2 points here where 1, 2 bang on, they're matched. Well, that is ultimately where a lot of resistance will be. So above 0.0229 and 0.0247 in that zone, if it takes that out, yeah, it's going to go. That would look really nice. But there's a lot of caveats there for the moment. So for me, I'd have to wait and see. Now, if the fundamentals are good and you have a lot of conviction, maybe you can start nibbling and buying as it goes down and you'll get a good average price. But using my kind of discipline, I'm not allowed to do that until I see it looking positive.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the fundamentals behind this to be bullish at these prices. In fact, if I had been holding this since, say, August or, even before that in June or something, I would have been taking profits on the way up. So I would have only a small amount of my position left. If you look at the buy when it was boring, which is what I say, it was very boring around 0.3 cents or 0.003. And so that was extremely attractive time period. It's no longer anywhere near there. It's probably not even going to go back to there, even if it dumps from here. At least not till like a massive crypto winter, and even then it might not. But for me, I would have been selling on the way up because it 10x from there and has been pulling back a nice retracement. So the question is whether it's going to continue. I guess there's two questions that I ask myself. Is it going to continue from here? And the answer to that is not known. We don't know. It's not giving us enough data. The second question is, how much is it going to pump from here? And so it's already made a 10x. And even if you're exiting now and jumping out, if you had made your entry at 0.3 cents and you're exiting at essentially 1.8 cents, you're still up 6x. So it's like, that's not even a bad sell point. If you haven't taken your profits, it's not a bad time because one of two things could happen. It could complete the right shoulder on this and then come down quite a bit more. Or it might break through those trend lines on the upside and continue. So we aren't looking at things in a vacuum. We're looking at them against, are there other options that are higher likelihood to pump from here with lower potential downside that haven't pumped 10x in the recent couple months when most things haven't. And so like for me, the risk is getting higher. And I think of risk like picking up gold coins on ice that is thinning. And the longer that it's been running up, the thinner that ice goes and is going to break through. And so I don't want to be picking up gold coins on that ice as it gets thin. And right now it's a little bit hard to tell how thin that ice is. But when it has gone 10x already, at least it's pulled back. And it's doing like a 30% retracement, which is nice. And it may continue the run from here. Or it might form a right shoulder and it might then drop down while everything else is pumping. And that's my concern. So for me, it's actually a sell. And I might regret that, but not if I sold and rolled it into something that does better over that time frame. So like we might look at it in 2 months and be like, Rainn, you were totally wrong. It's 2x from there. And it's like, yeah, but what I would have rolled that into is 5x from there. So I was right.
Yeah, and the thing is also, when you're taking a snapshot, it's a bit like what you were saying with the land. You're taking a snapshot decision given what's in front of you, and everything changes. And therefore, if it starts to look bullish, there's nothing wrong with then buying into it. So that's the thing. Flexible. You're flexible when you're not sure, but when you are sure, when you see like some strong price action, that's what you got to go with and be stubborn and stay with it. So there are times to be one or the other. And on that one,
for those that are invested in that, that's not funding on the project. It's done great the last couple of months, and probably you've taken a nice ride up, which is great. But always take profits while you're ahead, or you will wish you did. So it's a lot better to say, man, I could have held it longer and made more money than crap. I'm now upside down on my position when I used to be ahead by 5x or 10x. Okay, so let's take a look at Dent. I haven't looked at or thought about Dent in a long time, so I'm curious to see what the charts look like.
Okay, so just DENT, right?
Yep.
Okay, Dent US dollar. Yeah, so right, this is definitely inverted commas boring at the moment. It's the nice thing about it is that it's made some very clear resistance. So it's put those barriers in that it needs to break out to suddenly become nice and interesting. So we could be looking at it as it goes back up, to these levels. If everything's rallying, then this would start to look exciting. So a bit like the MATIC chart, it was going sideways for a long time, and then it just sort of picked up and started to do very interesting things in the short term that would suggest it could break out in the long term. But for the moment, it's still in this range, so I can't be bullish. Now, I say I can't be bullish. If I was a trader, in and out, and that's what I mean by trader, like 1 or 2 days, or maybe just a little bit longer, I would have a little nibble here, because this has had a nice retracement and it's in a good support zone where it should have a bounce. So buying it with a very tight stop is not the worst thing in the world to do. So you've got small risk, but potentially a big upside if it bounces. Now, that's a very short-term trade. It's not justified for the long term as yet, because it's still got a lot more work to do to break out through this resistance before we can get excited about it. But do I think it's going to do it? Yeah, I do. I like the way this has been an impulse move here. So this is a very strong first move. It's not a bearish trend from here. So that's not bearish. It's just sideways. So that's a really good positive thing. So if it then starts to break out here, it is going to go all the way to the new high. So this will be a really interesting looking chart, and it could start catching up very quickly. But I don't mind buying something when it's like at 0.0091. I would take it at those levels from a long-term perspective rather than trying to pick it up here. So it's a very different strategy for me. But technically, yeah, it's range bound, but slightly more on the positive side than the negative side.
Yeah, for me, this is a buy. Funny story about Dent. I made a killing from Dent. I bought it like November 2020. And the reason I bought it was very superficial. I didn't know very much about their fundamentals. But at the time, I was thinking, what coins are very, very cheap? That when a lot of people are FOMOing into the market, they're just going to think about, oh, what can I buy 1 million coins of for pretty cheap? And so I wanted something that was along that lines, that had a high token supply, that was cheap, that was tradable on Binance. So I bought a lot of it, and it didn't pump as soon as I thought it would. And so, but some of these things I just buy, and I threw like not even a whole lot into it. It might have been like $1,000. And then I heard some of the channels talking about it, and I was like, oh, I should check and see what the price is. It had pumped tremendously, and I was like, okay, sell. So I completely sold the position, and I actually hadn't thought about Dent since. But if you look at Dent's website, and that's dentwireless.com, they have vastly upgraded their website from, I don't even remember it being significant before. It looks great. And so they're a digital mobile operator with a global vision. So they're on this trend line that I like right now. It's on the lower part of that trend line. I think it's got a good future ahead of it. They're catching some momentum and steam with their bigger vision. See, it takes a long time for their vision to roll out. This is one of those ones that ICO'd in 2017. And the problem with being a new project is it takes a while to get some momentum. Like Konomi, that I talk about a lot, or VV. Yeah, they launched way back then, and so now they have like Disney, some NFTs with Disney, and some NFTs with Marvel and everything. But that was after 3 years of work. Dent has had 4 years to work on their project now, and so their use case is starting to come together. My guess is it does some pretty good things. Let me check it where their market cap is at. Regardless where the market cap is, it's a buy price for me here because it's on that lower trend line. And so I might only date this, or I might marry it, but when it hits that higher trend line, I would take some of my profits out, and then I would have some more, because at some point it's probably going to break that upper trend line and possibly even go climbing from there. But, you know, in case it comes back down and trades in that range, I would buy that lower trend line, sell some when it hits the upper range, and then at that point it might come back down to the lower range, at which point I would load up some more. And that's how I played Dent. It's been around a long time. It's on a lot of exchanges, like it's on Gate.io, Binance, KuCoin. You know, KuCoin I use a lot these days, and I really like it. So
I think the message there is don't leave it months before you look at it again, because I think, you know, whatever it's going to do it in the next few weeks. So yeah, that's a really good one.
True. It's funny, one of my sell signals is when I hear it on like the big channels that have huge amounts of followers and they start talking about it, that's actually one of my sell signals, and you would be shocked at how well that works out.
Yeah, no, I believe it.
Unfortunately, a lot of people, they use that as their buy signals. Oh my gosh, it's on BitBoy's channel, I better buy. Good luck with that. He runs an extremely well-produced channel. I have to give it that, the best produced channel. He has sometimes partnered with Token Metrics, and then he gives you Token Metrics analysis. Token Metrics knows what they're talking about. Ian Bellina and I forget the name of their technical analyst, smart people in the research team behind Token Metrics. So that was really smart of him to know what his strengths are. He is very good at talking. He's likable on his channel. His partner TJ, great too. But when they're talking about things, it's usually because it's pumped 300% or sometimes 5 or 10 or 15x. And that's way better sell signal than a buy signal.
You'd hope to see something before it's done that, and that's why I like technicals, because things can go quiet in terms of range before they break out. And yeah, it's, you know, there can be more. You know, there's the thing with any you know, sector. You've got meme coins that are probably worth nothing, but they'll still be pumped just because people want to pile into it. So, you know, even buying at those very late stages, you can still extract something out of the market.
If you just one night stand it.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Exactly.
One night stands can end up good or bad, like very much like in life. And so I like to buy when it's boring and hold it for the longer term, because that's when the good results are. So exactly. And with this audience, we're sharing how to think like investors. So now 95% of people are not going to walk away with massive money from crypto, because they're going to buy at highs, because they watch the major channels. They jump into something that's being pumped there, which those channels are covering something that's already 15 or 20 or 100 or 150x, because that's what's in the news, and that's what most people are searching. So there's a reason that they do that, because it grows their channel the fastest. You know, I get it. That's smart that they do that, because they're hitting, you know, growing the channel the fastest. Here, the audience, my goal is to grow an informed audience. So slightly different decisions drive this. So I like to analyze things when they're boring and when I think the price is amazing, and sell when it's hitting all the other major channels. So yeah, different drivers here. We won't be the biggest channel ever, because we don't run that way. In order to become the biggest, we'd have to talk about everything that 15x all the time, because that's what people are searching. And we're not going to make that choice, because it's just not what we're looking for.
That's very sensible. That's really sensible from someone who's been in the markets a long time. Those are wiser words than sometimes people realize. But the other thing you make a very good point about is that you do things your way, and everyone has to do it their own strategy way. You know, whatever works for them, and it's looking at how other people do it to work out whether they like it to buy on, you know, retracements, whether it use fundamentals or whatever it is. There's no anyone who says there's only this way and that's the right way. I mean, there are certainly some things that you will learn that are more consistently wrong to do, but it's still got to be down to the individual, and there's no shortcut for that.
Yeah, what I'm hoping is it develops longer term people that are positioned well during the crypto winter, right? Because if they take nice rides up here and you're not buying at the top and you're buying at lows, and you look at some things that we're talking about and then you do your own research and you're like, yes, and you make the decision to enter there and then you make massive amount of money. Well, you're not going anywhere during the crypto winter because you're positioned well and you're waiting for the prices to come down and you're getting a better vision. So it's like the goal of having the wealthiest audience or the most informed audience, which I think will lead to the wealthiest audience, it just has to do with covering things when the prices are more attractive. Then if your audience is always following in at the top, not only are you'll grow the fastest, but they won't stick around. And when crypto winter comes, you'll get savage. Plus, for money wise, I don't need to do this channel. I do crypto has already made me wealthy. This channel is just a way to grow a bunch of, I guess, audience that thinks similarly like an investor, and some of you have a great background, and so it's growing a network of people who think like this, that go counter-cyclical to the market, that make the real money. Because someday some of you are going to have private islands, and I don't know if my wife will ever let me buy one, but if your wife lets you buy one, I do want an invite.
And I'm sure there's some women out there who watch it as well. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and it might be some women. I know we have some women in the audience, so they don't make up a lot of crypto, but they actually tend to be less emotional about their crypto investments. Brilliant. So they can do very well, and maybe they'll have an island. Invite my wife and I.
Brilliant.
All right, let's take a look at. Looked at Spores yesterday. Well, it'll show up as yesterday. Let's take a look at Network, because Network is one of these metaverses, and it looks really cool. And so I've covered them a lot.
Is this the one Network?
No, it's Netvrk with a V instead of V.
Oh, right.
VRK.
Oh,
NET, there's no R in there, or no O, excuse me. There's no O.
Yes. Oh, I see.
There we go. Well, you might find one with more history, though, because it might not have more history than this.
Well, this is wow. I'd love to have seen it around here.
Now, this is only weekly. Can we see this daily by chance?
Yeah, absolutely.
There, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no, this is a great trend. It's really smooth. It's from the bottom left to the top right, which is what you want. There's not a lot of volatility going on, although it's broken into this very short-term high and come back down. But I'm not going to penalize it for that. I mean, it's running hot. So as far as the trend goes and the technicals, this is looking good. There's a nice trend line there. If it should come back to this area of support, 3.19, you've got a really solid support point as a buy point, or to hold, not to add any more. But as far as the trend goes and the technicals, this is looking great. I wish I'd seen it before. That's all I can say. So this is one where I would like to have seen it just as it's turning, and then it's showing signs that it's going to do something like this. Now, how much further will it go? I mean, I know you've said things about, will things 5x or 10x when they're already pretty big in terms of their market cap. So I don't know what those numbers are, but having said that, regardless, the trend is looking really good. So that's got to be a buy.
Yeah, this is another one with the token ecosystem for Network, right? So they're building this cool metaverse, and the land, if you were able to buy the land, you can actually get an idea through the map where your land is. So I was able to look at some of my land pieces. I bought like 50 land pieces, one gigantic one, and then some other ones, a whole bunch of the small ones. I like the land in these. The tokens, I don't know. I like to look at patterns and then use that to understand. And I don't fully understand the use cases for these tokens, like the Mana token, like Networks token, though I did cover Networks token when it was cheap and boring. And I took that right up. And I actually sold my last bit of Network, taking profits on it, right before Mark Zuckerberg did the Meta announcement. Ooh. And so, yes, and all of the tokens went crazy for the metaverses. and this one as well. So I took my last, see, it got really cheap. It got as cheap as 15 cents. If you happen to catch that spike down, which I did not, it went even cheaper, almost to like 7 cents. But at 15 cents, it was a fantastic buy, and I took that ride all the way to like $1.50. And so I can't complain about a 10x. It was an amazing ride up. It's now even higher, and I completely sold my positions because Mark Zuckerberg threw a wrench in it, the timing of things. And it's funny how a lot of the early pump this year was caused by Elon Musk, and it pumped tremendously, and then most things came right back down to the trend lines that they would have been on before and caused this early year pump. So I don't know how this will play out with Mark Zuckerberg bringing a lot of attention to metaverses, but if you think about it, these metaverses are really still 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 years out. So this ride will go up, and then it's going to turn back down at some point. So I expect there's still some more ride ahead. How much longer? The ice is getting thinner, right? The narrative will then swing to something else, maybe back to DeFi. And metaverses will go through a cooling period.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they're not ready to roll out where everyone can join it. The tech isn't there on any of them.
Yeah. So there will be some big pullbacks, but there'll also be some great, trends following it. So
it's probably like a buy. For me, it's a one night stand. Buy back in, and then I would be, when I hit like 40% profit or 50% profit, I'd be selling most of my position so that I'm completely whole, and that I can explore further upside without the worry.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good idea.
Cool. Let's take a look at Atom. Now, this is the Cosmos ecosystem, and I like Atom. In fact, one of my favorite chains, Luna, is built on their SDK.
So is it Cosmos? Is
Cosmos, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's just been a steady rise, somewhat steady. The trend line is somewhat steady.
Yeah. Well, we've got a correction going on here, which is notable because we have this, I was talking earlier about a double top and what a trend ending signal looks like. Well, this is a double top. So you get 1, 2, and then the market goes down. So for the moment, this is in a sell zone for me, but that doesn't mean that it's a long-term sell, because this is not a big reversal pattern. It's just a relatively minor one. So I think if it can get into, now this is where I'd like to buy it on a pullback using this trend line. If it should get as far as this point here, which would be around 17, then I think that would be good risk reward to start buying it. Now, if it doesn't, then I have to look at a strategy B, which would be what would it have done to show that the trend is over, or the bearish trend is over, and the market is now starting to move higher. So the first step would be break this trend line. And then the next step would be to break the trigger that caused it to be bearish in the first place. So if I put a horizontal line, let's just get one of those, and put that at the trigger. Now the trigger is a little bit of spiky price action here, so I'm not sure whether sometimes you get like false prices on charts, sometimes they're not, but I'm going to filter it out to this particular point here because it's near the resistance, near the support. So I'm going to say if it takes out 31, which is not that far away, it's only trading at 27, it can be done very easily, then this topping pattern is negated and we can start looking for a move higher. So for me, topping pattern means reversal phase, so I have to be bearish. I can't buy yet, but if it can overcome 31, then it's going to look really good. And or a retracement into this area here, which is where the longer term trend line is, which is around 17. So two interesting areas with which to put some sort of signals and alerts to tell you that the market's trading near them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a wait for me. I'm not going to buy at that point at all. I would have taken some profits on the way. I don't hold Cosmos because I'm full on blue chips, and this is in the blue chip category. It's a great project. I like their technology. Just not holding it because my blue chips, they used to make up almost 50% of my portfolio. Some of them have pumped so much that I've been selling them, and they only make up 15% of my portfolio now. It's really a lot of my stuff is in the lower cap alts that are the higher risk that I think as this massive parabolic move happens, they're more likely to do 10 to 50x, sometimes 100 to 150x, and some of these blue chips will do nicely. They'll do 3 or 4 or 5x. And that's why I have a little bit of blue chips. But Cosmos falls in that category. It's a great project. Fantastic things that will change the world. I'm just not holding their token, but not that I dislike them in any way, shape, or form. They're awesome.
Yeah, brilliant.
So for me, it's just to wait. Let's see. I want to take a look at XPR Proton. What's funny is we followed the success on this one, right? And you were able to get in on some triangular constriction.
That's right. Yeah.
And took some of that ride up.
Yes, indeed. And so at the moment, hang on, let's just take that off log and auto. Yeah. So at the moment, I'm still in it basically, but only a small amount. So I just sort of buy them and then forget about it and just don't worry too much. Again, just for people who haven't seen this before or heard about this, we were looking at this triangular constriction as a breakout point because one of the viewers very kindly put us onto it. So it's a really nice little technical pattern. So we got in, and then around 50 would be great, 0.05, it felt a little bit toppy. It felt like the market had just gone far enough. So we just suggested get out of your initial position and then just let it run. But actually I didn't. I just sort of waited. So now, this would have been a very nice consolidation before a break higher, and we were looking for that. But it's gone into a little double top, which is corrective. And so it's been underperforming here. But I still think that this is, broadly speaking, a very nice looking chart. And it stayed relatively high. It stayed relatively near its previous high. And I will invoke something called Elliott wave theory here, which is where you get what's called a 3-wave correction, an ABC. And to me, this feels like an ABC correction, which basically means there should be another big leg up. So I'm willing to hold out for another upward phase in this. And if it gets back over this 0.028 level, it would become increasingly positive. Now, it really does need to break into the new high, and the big level is 0.05. So I would be happy to buy more at 0.05 because it would have cleared all the resistance, and it would be telling me that this, wants to go at least to 0.85, 0.85 or somewhere like that. But for the moment, it's still in this correction. So it's been a little bit of an underperformance, but I'm quite happy just to hold it because I think longer term it's going up. It's also coming back to its longer term trend line as well. So it won't be bearish longer term until it's broken this line. So you can see how far away it's moved from that. And so a retracement is absolutely fine in my view. Now, I wouldn't want to see it back to the 0.011 point, but even if it came back that far, it would still be coming back to this trend line. So that's not necessarily the end of the world. But yeah, I would like to see it go up for lots of reasons. But I try to be as impartial as possible because, when you look at something and you've got a position in it, it's very easy just to look at the bullish side of it. And I don't want to do that. But I do feel it's got more upside. So you can take that position knowing that I've already got some, in mind. So if I'm being biased to the upside, then that's a possibility there.
Yeah, for me, this is I would have already taken profits out. If I hadn't taken profits, I had missed that. I'd be selling some, only from a standpoint of look at where the bottom of that was in July. Now, in July is very bullish, and I was like going gangbusters when everything was on sale. And imagine you got in at that July time period. You are up about 16x at the top when it hit 5 cents. That's a 16x upside. Now, even still at prices that it's at, because it was 0.03, you're up almost like, what's that? Close to 8x from the top. And so it's like, yeah, like it's not as good of a take profit zone out, but The reason is I look at it, the opportunity cost. So is it going to make money from here? Yes, probably. It's probably going to do well from here. But it's already experienced some of the gains. And I think about in this, like trying to ride something up 100x is risky, especially from this point. If you had bought it in the bottom of the bear market, 100x is very doable. In fact, many tokens have already done that. Cardano's already done that. Theta, a number of tokens have already done that. 100x up. But a great way to get 100x is a 10x and then another 10x. And so sometimes when some of these alts that I'm in, they go 10x, I take massive profits out of them, because then if I can roll it into something that's in a serious buy zone for me and I can take another 10x ride, well, essentially I've hit my goal of 100x. And so it's hard to get 100x from this point in the bear market or bull market, but it's a lot easier to get a 10x and then a 10x, or say you get a 14x and then you get a 10x. Then you've made 140x, which trying to take one project to 140x ride, well, if you can get in at the IDO on something that's really, really bullish, that might be possible, but it's a hard thing to do from this point. But 10x and then 10x is way more doable. So that's just my theory. I'd be selling to try to roll into something else that I think will go higher faster. There's nothing wrong with this project. It's great, and it'll go up from here. So when we do some reviews, because one of the things we're going to do is in the coming months look back at some of the calls that we made, it will look like I failed on this. It'll be like, Rainn was wrong. It is up.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'll be wrong. It's certainly possible. So
it depends on when we look at it, but it'll be up from here. And maybe if, it depends on when we're looking at it, but it will be up from here at some point in the coming months, and it will be up substantially. But it is my guess, right? I'm just a human being. I'm not always right. I'm just almost always right. So especially when it comes to crypto, now that I really took the time, I didn't start this channel when I was new in crypto because I didn't feel like I knew enough of what was going on in crypto, even though I had 20 years experience in real estate and other types of investing. I was very good there. But I really had to figure out what was going on with crypto before I felt like I had something to say about it. But I am very opinionated. Let's take a look at, I looked at a bunch of these. Kono, I do not know at all. If we could look at that, it's Kono. Because I don't know it, sometimes some of the viewers throw out something I don't know. I look at the chart and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, Konomi. I have heard of them.
Okay, so it's Konomi Network, right. So this is, what's going, I mean, this is in the boring zone, basically. So it's in this range, and I would like for it to have held a little bit higher, because if this was going to be making a triangular constriction before it breaks up, it should have held really around the point 660 area, around there, around 60 cents. But it hasn't done that. It's dipping into support. So it's really going for a test of this area here at half a cent. So that was a good resistant point on the way up. You can see how it blasted up. So whoever was buying it there remembers it, because they got out, and then it's gone much higher and back into that range again, touched it again, up again, then touched it again on the way down here. So there should be really good support here. I wouldn't like to see it break lower. That would worry me a bit, because it would change the feel of the chart and make it look a bit bearish if it's coming down here. So I would like to see it hit this and go back up again. And then if it can break through, I'll put in a resistance line. That would be, for me, the area to start looking for a buy. So I know I would leave a little bit of price action behind, but for me, that's worth doing so I don't get caught in something that goes lower. But very, very short term, there is some good support here at half a cent. So I wouldn't want that to go. And if like 2 weeks time we're still above it, then I think that's enough to say that it's going to have at least a little bounce within the range. But if it goes through that, that's not a great sign.
Yeah, for me, this is a buy just because it's in the Polkadot ecosystem. It is specifically, I'll share with you, it's money markets, decentralized money market protocol on Polkadot using Substrate. Polkadot's been so far out of the narrative for a while. It just, things go in narratives. Right now it's been gaming and metaverses. and so the tokens have taken off, but we started to go to a Polkadot narrative with them having a parachain auction, and so some Polkadot ecosystem things pumped, and then all of a sudden Mark Zuckerberg threw a wrench in that and focused everything in on metaverse. But eventually narratives come back around, and so that's why I like to buy when it's boring, and this is boring right now. It's, a strong project in a narrative that's, boring right now that a lot of people aren't focusing on. That's when I like to make my buy. So I would nibble some. I would pray that it comes down even cheaper, though I'm not sure that it will. And, I'd be holding this longer term. That I'd be like, okay, I'd buy some. I wouldn't throw everything I have at it. I'd just buy some, hoping that it breaks down longer as people focus on Sandbox and Decentraland and other things. And, yeah, and then I would pick up some more. So if you look at it off logarithmic scale, it's got this nice, I like that chart, and it's showing kind of this rounding bottom generally, though it might come down even lower before it then continues up. And that's why I would only nibble at it. But so I would say buy on this, though if we look back in 3 weeks, we'd probably say, oh, Rainn, it's gone even cheaper. And that's okay. That's just like, okay, buy more. And just fits my my rules that I follow.
Sure, I think you're right. When you look at this big picture, if this is all a base, then it's perfectly natural that it would be going sideways for such a long time. But that's why I wouldn't mind waiting for it to break up a bit, because this area here at $1.15 would complete such a massive low that it would target something like 3. So if you're buying it at those levels, at those low levels, there is so much potential upside. That's why I don't mind waiting a little bit. But I can see why you'd be excited and want to get it sort of early.
Take the 52 cents up to $3 range, and that's 6x, close to a 6x.
Yeah, I just need to see a little bit more before I can get in there. But it is sitting on a good support point, that's for sure. And I put in a Fibonacci retracement level just to see whether there was anything else to justify it. So Fibonacci levels are, you can basically split up the retracement into 38.2, 50%, and 61.8% as buy points. Now, it's gone through all of those levels. The next one would be 0.786 or 78.6%. So that comes in at the, let's see, 0.42 area. So if it hits 0.42, then it's like shut your eyes and buy it with a tight stop. Now, I'm just saying that's what you do with Fibonacci levels. They either work absolutely bang on, or they go straight through it and you get stopped out your position. So that's a really good one. I'm going to keep an eye on that. I really like that. So
good suggestion from our viewer. Great job on that.
Thank you very much.
Let's look at Solend. Solend's been interesting, and this has just become a very interesting project for me. I look at it pretty frequently, more than most. So most people are not covering this one. This is a Solana ecosystem. It's kind of like Aave on Solana, and it's actually backed by Aave, which is one of the biggest. Rather than Aave creating their own version or bridging over to Solana, they backed this one. It's also backed by Solend. So it's SOLEND. Now, there's not a lot of chart for us to look at, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think
this one ICO'd recently at 5 cents or $5, and it's dropped below that ICO price. Now, I think you're also people are earning tokens by providing liquidity or like staking and lending funds out on Solend. And so and then they're clearly selling those coins because something is dropping the price below even the initial coin offering price. Now, the pre-sale investors got in below this, but if I read it right, the lockups on those pre-sale investors are like 2 or 3 years. So I can't imagine they're putting sell pressure on this. And so, I picked up some. This chart doesn't really reflect it, but at like 7 something, and then it went all the way to like 17 or almost 17, and then came right back down. And so I've been buying it on the pullback here, and I just bought some more yesterday at like 420 and stuff. And so, for me, it's a little bit, you always get bloody when you catch a falling knife. For me, I don't mind it if I like the price. It's got the right backers, Coinbase Ventures and FTX. It's already listed on FTX. It hasn't been listed on Coinbase. I imagine it will because they're one of the backers, and when it does, it'll probably do well. It's just early for Coinbase to list it, but probably that's on the timeline that they know of when they will. And so for me, I just buy when it's boring. It's below ICO price. Its market cap is like, I don't know, 35 million or something. Let me take a look at it. For me, it works good. So don't love getting it cheaper or having it go cheaper. Mostly I kick myself because I'm like, I could have bought so much more, but that's just part of crypto. Market cap's at 33 million roughly, so I like that for this.
Yeah.
This is one that could go, if things come together and the stars align, it's one that could have a market cap of 3 billion or 10 billion. So, and it's backed by the right people. Sam Bankman-Fried, Coinbase Ventures. I feel like I'm buying it on a huge discount, and I'm happy to do it. Some people will never do this. You have your rules that you follow that make you money. A lot of other people don't because they chase green candles rather than I chase red ones. I'm like on projects that I like what's behind it. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me about the token structure and what the token is used for. And the truth is, other than rewards, it's not clear to me what the token is used for. Funny enough, it does matter and it doesn't at the same time. In the long term, that absolutely matters. In the short term, it doesn't. What is the use case of the Uniswap token? What, you get voting rights eventually in their DAO, but other than that, what is the use case for it? Has it stopped the Uniswap token from doing well? No, it's kind of like, what's the value of a LeBron James rookie card? I mean, does it guarantee that you get to talk to LeBron James? No, it doesn't. What's the value? Well, when LeBron James does well, that card does well because people want it more. In some sense, some of these cryptos, their fundamentals of the token is weak, but that doesn't mean it won't do tremendous in the short term. Long term, if they don't put some good fundamental use cases in there, that won't hold because then people will sell for things that have better fundamental use cases. But it's kind of like the Uniswap token I sold because it didn't have a fundamental use case. Because I was an early investor in Axie Infinity, I got AXS tokens airdropped to me, and I sold those. Well, they weren't quite airdropped to me. They were given to those that had Luna that came with the land sales. Anyway, so I got some AXS token. I was like, what is the use case of this? There was no use case at the time. And so I sold those at like 50 cents. They've since gone to like $120. But at the time, there was no use case. I didn't realize that sometimes even with no use case, if the project does well, the token does really well. So that's a lesson I learned the hard way just in the last year.
Yeah. So no, that's really interesting. I mean, at least there's so what you're saying is a real business behind this that could, obviously develop and make money rather than it just following the perhaps shorter term trends of somebody's fortunes. But, technically it's still in a downward trend. So for me, I'd have to wait a little bit longer, but not much longer, because if it breaks this point, 4.62 level, then it will have made enough of a short-term base to say it's worth a buy, although it does need to break this longer-term trend line to make that look even better. But in its favor, it has been going sideways and holding support for the last few candles. So at least this trend rate has slowed into a sort of flattening. But what we do need to see is this turn into some positive price action to show that this actually has formed a base. So for me, I'd have to wait here. Now, if it is as exciting as you're saying, which it really does sound good, these are very good levels. But from my rules, I can't buy it here. Not quite yet. But is it a watch? Yeah, for sure.
The reason why I like this buying strategy, I've only put a total of about 7,000 into it, which for my portfolio, that's not a big amount. though that 7,000 is probably only worth like 3,000 now, maybe 3.5, and that's okay to me. Like, actually, if I had a preference of whether it would go up now or whether it'd go down, I would prefer it to go down. I would love for it to go to $3. Why? Because then I'd move like 12,000 in or 20,000 in. At $3, I would be happy as a lark. Will it hit that? I don't know. We'll see. And that's why I've been dollar cost averaging into it as it's gotten like below, especially below IDO price or the ICO price. I can't remember which way it launched. I didn't get to participate in that. But this is one of my viewers brought to me, and I looked into it, and I was like, okay, backed by Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and Alameda Research, as well as Coinbase Ventures. And they already had a lot of total value locked, that people are lending money and borrowing money on their platform. In fact, it's climbing the charts to be one of the biggest ones used that way in Solana's ecosystem, which is a growing ecosystem. So the narrative made complete sense to me. All right, we are at an hour and 20 minutes. So, yeah, I love our chats, and I love your perspective on things. It broadens my perspective by a lot. So thank you for joining us, Paul.
Feelings mutual. Absolutely love to hear what you think of the technologies, and it's been great fun. Thank you to everybody who's been putting their suggestions forward, and please keep doing that because we love looking at them. So thank you for inviting me, and have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, for the viewers out there, if you're ready to level up your crypto game, join us. Subscribe to the channel. If you haven't hit that like button, could you do us a huge favor? Hit that like button. It really helps us grow and get at least more exposure to people that are willing to think differently in order to have different types of returns. Because just know that in 2013's bull market, there were a lot of people that got in, and a lot of those still aren't around. 2017, the same thing happened, and there are a ton of people coming into space now that are going to FOMO into things at peaks and not be around. And we're trying to help some of them, as well as help all of you who have already joined us. And the only way we can help some of them, because certain people are never going to resonate with this message, and that's okay. We don't want to get to them. We want to get to the ones that are willing to think this way. They just don't know where to find this type of information. And when they hear it, it resonates with them instantly. So every time you like our videos, it helps push it out so we can catch some more of those people that we're looking for. And that's what we're trying to build a community of, is people that think like this already, that hear this and they're like, that's exactly what I've been looking for. So thanks for helping us grow this channel. We want to reach more of them. We won't ever be the biggest channel in crypto. That's okay. We don't need that. We don't even want that. But what we do want is the most informed audience in all of crypto, and that's what we're working for. So thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. We have our Rainmaker wrap for all of you. You know what? Our long-term audience knows what this is about, but essentially these are words that reinforce the principles that we teach, that I use in my system, that's helped me go from thousands to millions. Thanks. See you soon. Whew. I look forward to having the TVs. In fact,
came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit bad before you're good. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I sit the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic, they dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge to gain. Show, sticking out this wrong, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. I'm sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go with the hate, let the haters be crappy. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Amazing time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, but time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.